Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So about 7 million people, I guess the really great news is it will be receiving now their unemployment tax refund, specifically on the federal level, sometime now in the next 1 to 2 to even 3 weeks, with many, a huge majority of them now expected to receive them now, but specifically by the end of this week that this video is being made. The story to what really ended up happening is I believe originally it was believed by a lot of people that they were going to start to send out the refunds last week, but I think what ended up happening, and just specifically from just asking around, I don't think really anybody received their unemployment tax refund last week in the end. I think the general belief is that they probably ended up going through some kind of delay, but the great news is that with the hope that everything stays on schedule and right on time, they are now hoping to send it by the end of this week. And it's even more true because this also happens to be the last week of May, so if they keep their promise, then technically it has to come by the end of this week. But maybe feel free to comment down if you have received your unemployment taxes yet, and maybe what state you're currently in. Because even though technically this is on the federal level, there will still be some kind of variation, depending on your region or just your tax situation. And as always, as we currently know, is that the most authentic information will always come from the people that are physically living and experiencing everything firsthand. Hence also the situation to why we kind of received information that I don't think anybody received their taxes last week. But again, feel free to comment if you guys did. But today I pretty much just want to talk a little bit about what to expect this week, how much to physically receiving your taxes, what's been going on there. And now I will also admit one thing is that there is a special group of people, and this is maybe the harder news. Thankfully most people I think are set, but there is a group of people, however, that may not be getting their tax refund in general. So not just this week, but just in general, because they may be just, let's just say, taking some of that money back. But we're going to talk all about that, so stay tuned. So as always, same procedure as always. Remember to smash the like button in light of great news. Consider subscribing. Always happy to have new people. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about, honestly, just really if anything, especially about your unemployment situation, or really honestly just anything at all. So that being said, let's get this video started. So when it comes to the $10,200 unemployment tax, and again specifically I do want to state is that it means that $10,200 of your unemployment will be waived when it comes to the tax level and then refunded to you. So the idea is that when it comes to the unemployment taxes, I believe the first group of people that will receive it will be single filers. I believe it extends also to head of household. So I believe you would be part of that first squad of people. Afterwards, they're going to be sending it to the married individuals or married couples, and then just people that have more specific or complicated tax related situations. And then afterwards, every single week, they're just essentially going to be starting to send it to group by group, depending on when they are specifically ready. Very similar to how a lot of people rolled over to the new unemployment program way back when the third stimulus package was approved. Now, I do think it's important to clarify is that when it comes to taxes, exactly like typical income, there are essentially two kinds or two groups of taxes. There's essentially your federal taxes and then essentially your state taxes. I think it's important to clarify is that this week what they are going to be refunding is the federal taxes, not the state taxes, which in a way is maybe even a good thing because it does mean that you guys can get even more money potentially on the state level later on. And again, I do think it's important to notice is that not every single state will be doing it on the state level, but thankfully every single state will be doing it on the federal level, and this week it applies to the federal level. If you need a very quick recap, this is pretty much the map that you might have seen floating around that talks about it, but essentially the 12 states that will not be doing it on the state level, so this really applies later on, is going to be Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, North Carolina, New York, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and West Virginia. They will not be waiving taxes on the state level, but the great news is that it's kind of irrelevant because this week week is all about the federal level. Now, if you guys are trying to figure out how much you're specifically going to receive back is the general idea is that if you were to look at the 1099G, specifically, it's pretty much the tax form that your state likely sent you when you had to input your unemployment information to do your taxes. If you collected under $10,200 in unemployment benefits, then whatever amount that you see on that form in terms of how much they took away on the federal level when it comes to taxes, the great news is that you will receive everything back. Now, on another notice is that if you received more than $10,200, because keep in mind only $10,200 was covered, then it probably depends a lot more about your tax bracket. But for most people, because if your only source of income, or certainly if your major source of income last year was pretty much from unemployment, I believe most people probably collected about like $10,000 to $20,000. For most people, probably closer to $20,000. The income tax, or specifically the federal tax rate for people that are typically in that bracket, is right around 10%. 10 to 15%. Of course, you know, the higher you go, the closer to 15. So because of that reason, and because you guys get $10,000, $10,200 waived, it's believed that most of you guys will probably get somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 back as a refund, which is, you know, the really great news. And again, it's because $10,000 to $2,000 is about 10 to 15% of $10,200. So that's really where the math comes from. Now, do keep in mind is that because this happens to be on the federal level, it also does mean that later on, assuming that your state is one of the states that does it, because sadly, again, there were 12 states that did not do it, and I'm also in one of those states, so I feel you if you happen to be there, is that you're probably going to get even more money back later on when they refund you on the state level. And also, actually, interestingly, if you really want to further check is that many tax softwares, if you use the tax software to file, so for example, like on TurboTax, HR Block, I believe that a lot of them actually have their own calculator built in that you can kind of use to calculate. So when you actually completed your taxes, it might even specifically give you the exact amount of money that you're going to be able to receive on the federal level, which hopefully is really nice. But I just figured I'd kind of share the math to how they figure it out if you happen to maybe file by hand, by an account, or just basically any method outside of using tax software. Now, I do really want to share, and this is maybe the harder news, it doesn't apply to a lot of people, but there's definitely a population out there, is that there may actually be a select group of people that might not really be receiving almost anything in general. So what are some cases about where this might apply is that, for starters, one of the things about this unemployment tax situation is that they are garnishing a lot of it. So if you happen to be in debt of some kind, this could be maybe like, for example, if you own a hospital bill, if you just own child support, those are probably the most common. But basically, any kind of bill that you might have to pay back, the harder news is that you probably, they could potentially take that in your unemployment tax. So you may not actually receive really anything if that happens to apply for you. The other big thing also to notice is that if you owe a lot of taxes elsewhere, so for example, maybe from your regular W-2 job, essentially, if you happen to owe taxes from your regular job from before you were unemployed, then likely they will factor that math inside so it can potentially offset. Now, the great news is that if from your job you actually are able to get an even greater refund, then they're going to stack it, so now you actually get even more money back. But it also does mean that if you physically owe taxes to the IRS, they may potentially use that difference to offset it. And if that amount ends up being greater than what you would have received from your unemployment tax being cut away, then there is a chance that you may actually not be receiving the tax cut, specifically the tax credit or cut, depending on how you define it, in general. You do also have to make sure that you did file your taxes, so that's another huge thing, is because if you didn't file your taxes, then they probably don't have your information to actually be able to physically deliver it. So that's why it is important that you do have to file your taxes. But essentially, the great news is that most of you guys should be able to receive it by the end of this week, with the assumption hopefully everything goes on schedule. But as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just really anything at all, especially if you have received it or if you will be receiving it, if you do end up receiving it in the future and watching into the future. But that's pretty much what I really just wanted to cover in today's video. Remember to smash the like button if you guys hopefully found that insightful, and consider subscribing for more information about unemployment. I'll put other videos that are hopefully also cool about unemployment if you haven't checked that out. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.